Chris, how are you?
Fine, and
Fine, I guess. I enjoy the weather pretty much, don't you?
but it's getting colder now. I find it much colder here in Australia. I mean, in Canada than in Australia.
Australia is a continent, isn't it? How big is it really? Is it bigger or smaller than Canada?
Well, that's right. Australia is the smallest continent in the world. It has 7 million kilometers squared, which actually makes Canada a bigger country. I believe that Canada has around 9 million kilometers squared, and it's only a country, not a continent.
Australia's climate very different from here.
Yeah, most of the territory in Australia is actually a desert. The inland part of Australia is a desert, and it's actually the driest inhabited continent in the world. If you look at the north, it has a more tropical climate, and it also gets very hot and humid there. It rains a lot more. While in the southeast and southwestern corners, there's more of a temperate climate.
So where do people live in Australia?
They live in the southeast and the east coast mostly. Look here, I've just typed in the map of Australia. The biggest city, as you can see, is Sydney, just here. That's also where the first British settlers arrived in 1788. Sydney, I believe, has one of the most beautiful harbours in the world. And Melbourne, which is just here, is also quite big, but it also appears more European to visitors than Sydney. And that's just in the south here, next to that river. And in the north, there's Brisbane, which is the capital of the Sunshine State, Queensland.
Sydney is the capital of Australia, isn't it?
No, the capital is actually Canberra. It's pretty small, only about 300,000 inhabitants, and it's near the Brindabella Range. It's actually the largest inland city in Australia, and it was started from scratch in the beginning of the 20th century.
Well, Australia is surrounded by water. Doesn't it have a lot of beaches?
Oh yeah, tons. It has many.
What's the most popular one?
That depends, I guess. For me, I live in Brisbane. The closest one, or the first class beach close to me, I believe would be the Gold Coast, and I reckon that's pretty popular. You have a lot of resorts there, and you can scuba dive just nearby at the Great Barrier Reef.
That sounds great. I always wanted to learn how to scuba dive. Maybe I could take a weekend course there.
You're still planning to travel to Australia, aren't you?
I would like to go next year in the summer.
What do you mean, the Australian or the Canadian summer? They're two very different time periods.
The Australian summer, of course. It starts on December 21st, doesn't it?
Wow, yeah, that's right. It's spring there now. How much time do you have for the trip?
4 weeks, maybe 5. I'm going to Europe first, and then I want to go to Brisbane via Singapore. Have you been to Singapore before?
No, never.
It has the best airport in the world. From Brisbane, I would visit the Gold Coast. But what do you think? What other places should I visit?
Sydney and the Blue Mountains. Melbourne, of course. It's a pretty nice city. There's Ayers Rock, which is called Uluru by the Aboriginals in Australia, the native people. It's the world's largest rock, and it's just a massive red rock. It's pretty impressive. Look, I'll just type it here. Here's a picture of Uluru, if you can see. It looks great, doesn't it?
Yeah. It does, but how can I get there? How far is it from Melbourne, for example?
Look, I found this website which can give you this sort of information. From Melbourne to Alice Springs, it's about 2,250 kilometers, and from there to Ayers Rock, it's about another 250 kilometers.
Oh no, that's very far, isn't it? So how do you reckon I should travel? Should I rent a car? Can I take a bus or a train? Or is it a better idea to fly?
I recommend you rent a car and drive from Brisbane to Sydney. The scenery is really nice along the way, and it's about 1,000 kilometers. Not a short distance, but Australia is a big country, and that should take you about 2 days, and you wouldn't really have to hurry.
In Australia, you drive on the left of the road, don't you?
Yeah, that's right, but that shouldn't pose any problems, no?
But I don't want to spend my vacation behind the wheel, really.
Well, that's not a problem. You can look at the scenery while you're driving, and you can fly Virgin Blue. They have a lot of destinations, and I find they're pretty dirt cheap, especially by Canadian standards. But unfortunately, they don't fly to Alice Springs. Look, I'll type in this website here for you. As you can see, they have quite a few destinations in Australia. Maybe you could fly back to Brisbane with them. A ticket from Virgin Blue is not more expensive, much more expensive than taking a bus, but it's a lot faster.
Okay, that sounds good. Do you know if I can buy The Lonely Planet in French for Australia?
Look, that shouldn't be a problem, but you should visit their website. They have a lot of useful information. Look, it's just here.
Thank you, that's a good idea.
No problems, mate.